Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Erica, the author, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Monday. I hope your day has gotten off to a great start because I am here to do my weekly review of Married to Medicine. Of course, we know we are at the very end of their season 12. This was episode 16, and it was just the second part of their reunion. They're only getting 2 parts, so this was actually the end. So it was a pretty good reunion. I have a lot of notes. You guys know, if you've been watching me for a while, I try to be as detail oriented as I possibly can, and trust and believe, guys. You know, I have my little notebook here and I have a lot of notes. I think I probably have like 5 or 6 pages of notes because it wasn't just about scenes, it was more of the dialogue. So I have everything written down for you. So hang in there with me, guys. I'm gonna try to give you as much as I can. And yeah, like Glow says, let me cook. So let's just get into it. It starts off, you know, the scene actually opens back up with the continuation of Dr. Simone and Dr. Jackie talking about their friendship. We already know that Simone felt like Jackie did not represent their friendship well or take up for her when she was on Watch What Happens Live. We know that when she was on Watch What Happens Live, Andy asked Jackie, did Simone push Heavenly? Jackie said, I wasn't there. So Andy said, well, you seen the footage, what do you see? Jackie played the neutral role and never really admitted that Simone did not push Heavenly. So that's what Simone wanted from Jackie. Jackie said, Simone, what do you want from me? She said, Jackie, I want you to tell the truth. And Jackie said, the truth is you did not push Heavenly. Andy sort of inserted himself and said, Jackie, that's all she wanted from the beginning, was for you to tell the truth. They hugged it out. Jackie said, now, why did you unfollow me? And, you know, they kind of laughed about it. They both said they loved each other. And, you know, she went back to her seat. Quad said, Simone, can you just pull your phone out and follow Jackie? And that was pretty much the end of it. Their friendship has been in limbo, like, for a while now. And you know, I think they're just going up and down, up and down. I think that things would be a little better between Jackie and Simone, probably if maybe they weren't on television. It helps because they get a chance to spend a little time together, but then too, there are some things that they probably need to talk about and work out off camera. Someone made a very good point on Twitter, and I'm not sure who it was because I would love to give them their props for what they said there. It was just their opinion, but they said that it seems as that Heavenly looks at Dr. Jackie as her mom and how she revered her mom. She loved her mom, and Simone is like her sister that she can't stand. And it does kind of seem that way because if you were watching the show in the beginning, whether you watched it or not, Jackie wasn't as close to Heavenly. Heavenly was more closer to Simone. But as time went on, it seemed like something switched. I feel like Heavenly kind of got angry with Simone about something that we're unaware of. And she said, okay, I'm going to get you back. And so she did it by getting close to Jackie. And now they are friends. I'm not saying they're not friends, but I think that Heavenly had a motive for sort of befriending Jackie. And now it has sort of caused a wedge. So in the process of that, that's just my opinion, guys, but that's what we kind of saw. So after they sort of made up, Andy asked each individual lady, did Heavenly push Simone? They all said no. Dr. Contessa went even a little further to say that Heavenly has a Black Karen energy. She said Heavenly is a person who loves to start confusion, who loves to start things, and then, you know, she runs for security. She's always trying to get production involved or going behind the scenes to kind of get them to stop what is going on or to stop actually the mess that she created. She says she loves to use buzzwords like unhinged and threatening and stuff like that to sort of push her weight around. And I agree with Contessa about that. We've seen Heavenly do that. I do believe that Heavenly does go to production and complain on people. I do believe that Heavenly is the person who will say, I refuse to film with her or whatever the case may be. So I was glad that Dr. Contessa even said that. I felt like she was telling the actual truth. So Heavenly butts in and says, well, Contessa, I'm not scared of Simone. I will rip her throat out. I'm scared of you. I'm scared of you. And so Andy corrected Heavenly and said, Heavenly, it's not a good look for you to call Simone a physical threat while you're saying that you would rip her throat out. And that's true too. But we already know, like I said, Heavenly has an issue with Simone. She's not afraid of Simone because, you know, Heavenly can even just take her by the weight alone. Simone has said many times that she's not a fighter. So, of course, that makes Heavenly feel like she can sort of dominate her in that way. Meanwhile, the men are in the back, guys. They're arguing. So what happened is Curtis attacks Eugene, and I say that it was an attack because I feel like this was pretty much orchestrated, and that's just my opinion, but I do. Curtis told Eugene, he said that the men have always agreed to not get involved with the women's business, but it seems like Toya is the one sort of perpetuating all these lies about him. So Eugene said, well, how did my wife lie? Well, your wife is saying that, you know, I put my hands on all these other women, and she said, Curtis also said that Toya said that some woman told her something. So Dr. Eugene said, well, I don't know anything about that. The only thing I can speak to is what Toya said on Watch What Happens Live. When Toya was on Watch What Happens Live, probably at the end of season 11, there was a shady question asked about, they showed a picture of Curtis having his hands on Heavenly's waist, and they asked Toya about it, and Toya said, given Curtis's history, he should not put his hands on anyone. He's already put his hands on 2 of the women's waist here in the group, and I don't think it's a good look. Maybe people say, you know, Toya was being shady or whatever the case may be, but she answered the question truthfully. Toya is not telling a lie. Curtis did put his hands on Heavenly's waist, and he also pulled Toya in his lap in season 5. So again, that was not a lie. So for Curtis to even be talking about that, and Curtis was trying to tell Eugene, you know, I don't like the fact that you're bringing this up, and Eugene is saying, basically, I'm not bringing it up. It was a question that came up on Watch What Happens Live. Eugene and Toya are not talking about Curtis. It came up because she was asked the question. And so Eugene said, well, I don't know anything about multiple women. I know about 2. And that's what Toya said. So my wife did not lie. And, you know, that's the thing about it with Curtis. And I wrote big as day. You guys probably can't see it, and you probably really don't even care. But I said, Curtis, don't go to Eugene and Toya's house anymore. I know that these guys have to film for next season. Don't go to their home anymore. Don't go and eat their food. They say Eugene is a great cook. Don't go and eat his food. Don't go and drink his liquor. Don't go and partake of anything, because if you really don't like him, you need to stay away from him. You're going to have group activities and stuff like that, but you don't need to be around him, because I feel like Eugene, to me, Curtis to me just disrespected Eugene in a way, and I felt like it was totally unnecessary, especially after what Toya did, and she was really just answering a question. So the women, they show clips of the doctors. They show them at work, and we love that. I know I do. I love when they go on the medical missions. I love when they're in the office and they're talking to their patients. I've always liked that about this show. That's what sort of makes them stand out from other shows. So they were showing them when they were in Jamaica, and they were trying to like encourage, you know, the children, and talking about what they do in the medical field and how they have an opportunity to actually do the same thing. They were talking about all things medicine. And then they even got into a serious conversation about the issues in the medical fields and how doctors and nurses will be affected by the ending of DEI. Dr. Simone was the first one to say if it weren't for that, and if it weren't for her Pell Grant, she would not be able to, actually, she would not even be sitting here today, because she would not have been able to become a doctor if it had not been for her Pell Grant. You know, Contessa confirmed the same thing. She said, look, no one can afford $400,000 for medical school. You know, she said, my father was a truck driver. My mother worked at the post office. We're not rich, and those things help students to get their education. Brandi and Angel spoke up. Quad kind of mentioned it first about Angel being a nurse, but Brandi and Angel spoke up and said, hey, you know, we already know what's been said, that nursing is not even considered, they're not going to even consider that an actual, or consider that degree to be a degree. Nursing will no longer be, you can't really get a degree for nursing, and it won't mean anything. And so that does affect them. And I'm sorry for getting my words jumbled up. I know exactly what was said, but it's just the fact that there's so much going on in this climate and in this world, and we understand that we need nurses just as we need medical doctors and physicians. And so nurses definitely have their place. They earn their degree. It is valid. It should be valid. And for this administration to say that it's not valid, that is a huge problem. And Angel said that it will also affect patient care. So we are living in some perilous times, but the conversation was needed and it was necessary, and I was glad that they actually had that conversation. So the men sit down with Andy. Dr. Simone, Quad, and Toya were actually in the back first. They were sitting like in their little waiting room. And Simone said, Quad, this brings back bad memories for me. And, we all know what happened last year in season 11. Quad and Simone got into a really, really bad argument in the back. Quad said, Simone, that was last year. We have moved on. She said, girl, we even slept in the bed together. She said, I don't even care about that. And they kind of laughed it off. And I was glad because I really like the dynamic between Simone and Quad. I like Dr. Simone and I like Quad. And I like their dynamic together, especially when they're like having fun and joking around. I really, really do like how they feed off of each other and have a good time together. So I was glad that that was kind of like squashed right in that moment. So Andy speaks to all the men. He spoke to them individually. He acknowledged how they looked. Cecil had a really nice tuxedo jacket on. The other men just had on like regular suits. Andy even said that Steve was showing his cleavage. Steve was, ready. He was ready. He was ready. It was like ready, set, go time for him. But I was shocked that Andy kind of said that he was showing his cleavage. Because he had on a low-cut blazer with really no shirt on under it. I think it may have been a vest, but it was very like low-cut. So the men were sort of just joking around a little bit. Andy mentioned that there was some trouble in the back. He heard that there was some, stuff, drama in the back. Eugene said clearly what it was. He said Curtis is angry with my wife about things that she said on Watch What Happens Live. So, they sort of talked about that for a minute. And Curtis was just saying he doesn't have an issue with what Toya was saying. He has an issue with the truth and stuff like that. And I wrote down here, what did Curtis want Eugene to do? Did he want Eugene to jump in her face and tell her, you don't speak about Curtis, you don't mention Curtis's name, you don't say anything about Curtis? What did you want him to do? Eugene knows how Toya is. Toya has always been very vocal, very, very honest. Sometimes Toya can be brutally honest. And so that's just who she is. She was asked a question, but again, she told the truth about it. And since when do we even really care about what Curtis is saying? Curtis has never even been an intricate part of this show, even with the men. We know what he did to Jackie. Okay, we know that happened years ago, but still, Curtis, I'm just sorry, the viewers don't even really have respect for Curtis. So I don't even know why Curtis is trying to make his mark or talk about anything. But like I said, to me, it was just planned. It was all planned to sort of come against Dr. Eugene. So Andy asked Eugene about, he said they got a lot of questions about Toya and Eugene hosted a skip work day party and how they had gotten into it. So Dr. Eugene started off by saying, he said, well, first of all, he said, my wife and I got into it. He said, I will say that as a married couple, that I would say there's probably no married couple that can say that they haven't had a moment like that. It just where they spoke to each other harshly. It just so happens that we were on television and we were filming at that time. He said a lot of things occurred that day. He said if it weren't for it being like a cast event, some people would not have even been invited. So it may not have even gone that far. That's what Dr. Eugene said. So, here Steve is jumping in saying that, oh, that's a spin narrative. Okay. So Eugene said that at that particular event, the hostility wasn't even about Mimi per se. He said, but Mimi was sitting there. She did say something to Toya, and she did have judgment on her face, just as Heavenly did. And Eugene said that he's been on the show for 12 seasons, and he said the energy is off. He said they're acting out. He said in all the 12 years, he said the men have never had these kind of issues, and they've never gone at each other this hard. The only time we've seen the men really get into it is, I think, season 6, when Dr. Aiden, Mariah's husband, Dr. Aiden, and Dr. Damon got into it, and they were in Anguilla. Anguilla or Antigua, and they got into, I think it's Antigua, and they got into it really bad. That was the only time that the men have gotten into it that severely. Other than that, they've always been able to pretty much work it out. So Steve, you're coming in hot, and you're bringing a different energy, and it's not good, and I'll deal with you later. But like I said, this is reality TV, and they always say reality TV is a beast. So Steve is ready to come in and, get his shine on and get a pat on the back from Damon and Curtis for being with the manly men, and standing up to what he considers Dr. Eugene to be Toya Bush. Be ready for everything that comes along with reality TV. Of course, Curtis butted in again and said, well, it doesn't matter if he's only been here 2 years or 20 years. It started in your house. And like I said, Eugene said that, hey, most of you guys basically shouldn't have even been there from the get-go. And so, even Andy asked Steve, like, what is your issue? You're speaking over there, but what's your issue? And Steve really couldn't even answer that because, basically Eugene was telling him he's making it personal, and Steve was saying things. So Andy said, well, who are you talking about? It's very clear who I'm talking about. Okay, so you're saying you don't have an issue with Eugene, but yet and still you're telling Andy, well, you know who I'm talking about. Like, it's just crazy at this point. Steve is whack. He's the cornball. I know they use that upstate, like in New York, Philly. You're whack. I'm from DC, you Alabama. Like, nah. Steve, you get no love from me. You're a jerk. You're whack. You're a cornball. You're a Bama. It's nothing that I can say good about you. Like, we ain't got nothing for you. So Andy eventually asked Damon about the situation with his son. Damon said that, hey, it was a situation that had gotten out of control. He didn't know how to handle it, but he handled it the best way that he could as a father. He did not tell what really happened. We will probably never know the full details of what happened. I said that they're hiding something. It's very, very big. From what we know, Damon Jr. sort of approached I don't know if he was approached by the police, but he and the police sort of got into something. I don't know if it was a tussle. I don't know if it was just a verbal exchange, but something happened. Damon and Heavenly are covering that up extremely well, but he's saying that he has not spoken to his son. He wants his son to know that he loves him. He said that he is a doctor. He's read all about those things in medical books, but he wasn't prepared for what he had to deal with his son. And he was just saying that the men, he doesn't want anybody talking about the situation because they really don't know what happened. And I said to myself, newsflash, Damon, none of these men have commented on your son. And the women really didn't either. The only thing that Toya said is that you can't talk about our family and our children and then think that no one can say something about your situation. But she did not actually talk about the son or the specific situation. So they went on. Damon said that to me, he was trying to push the onus on them. He said, I'm very surprised in the things that's being said in this group by the women. It's very cruel. It's very harsh. They're even coming at me, and I have not said anything. And Scott jumped in and said, he told him, he said straight up, he said, Heavenly has said things. And he said, I know this firsthand. He said Heavenly has said some things and done some things to both the men and the women in this group, and they have been bad. And he said that basically what you're seeing or what you're hearing is probably based on retaliation. He said because his wife has done that to everyone. And Scott was right. Scott and Contessa used to be very close to Damon and Heavenly. They got into it, and we just know what it is. Heavenly has gotten into it with everybody on there. She said something about every person on there. She's even said stuff about Dr. Jackie and Dr. Curtis, you know, sort of like she said little side comments and sarcastic things about them in the past, but again, they're friends now. And you know, she doesn't say a whole lot about Quad. She used to back in the day, but she doesn't say anything about Quad. But we know that no one on this show was off limits. Heavenly has been on here since season 2, and none of the ladies have been off limits. I don't think she said anything about Brandi or Angel because they were new, but all of the OGs and the veterans of this show, yeah, she's all she said something about the women as well as their husbands. So Damon apologized. He said, he apologize for his part in it, but Damon, it's okay for you to apologize. And I said it's just par for the course. Damon always apologizes. Damon always wants people to look at him in this great light and, oh, I'm gonna apologize, because I haven't said it and I haven't done it. Yeah, but Damon, every time your wife gets on this screen, she's doing it. So your apologies are kind of empty if your wife comes right back and then attacks them or says something about someone's child or says something about the women or says something about someone's husband. It doesn't mean anything. I have been saying for years, Damon is not who we think he is. It's quiet, subdued demeanor is not really who he is. I think that's fake and phony. I think Damon is very mean. I think Damon can be a monster if he wants to. That's just my opinion, guys. And I also think we've just never seen his personality. And I think over the years, people have had so much respect for Damon because, he is mild-mannered and he doesn't say a lot. But at this particular point in time, I'm starting to see Damon as a bully. Him and Heavenly have sort of kind of like gotten into that bully thing where they can do what they want to do on the show, but no one better not ever say anything about their family, about their children, or about them. And I think, like I said, that's like a bully mentality at this point. So the fake apology, I wasn't really into it, but he did apologize. And Steve co-signs, yeah, that's what a man does. That's what a man does. He doesn't, a real man will apologize for his wife and for himself. He won't deflect. He won't deflect. So Cecil jumped in and said, of course, Steve attacks Dr. Eugene again. And Cecil said that the issues are coming from the women. Cecil said that the issues are coming from the women, and I put i.e. Heavenly. He said it's spilling over into the men. He said, like Eugene said, he said the men have had conversations in the past, and he said, yes, they weren't always pretty, but they always came to some resolution. He said, but it's a different animal now, it's a different beast, and something has happened to the point where they're changing and they're not sort of coming back or bouncing back from that now. So something has happened. That means that the energy is off, and that means that things have really gone too far. He said it's gotten nasty and it's different. Those were his exact words. And that was pretty much about them. That I'm trying to give you everything, guys. I don't want to leave anything out. So as the men's segment, and this is why I know something is off. Andy said that and don't get me wrong. Cecil went on to say that, he said we all have been hurt by things that have been said in this group. We all have, you know what I'm saying? But he said, look, but we just have to agree that, hey, we have to sort of maintain our friendship and maintain our camaraderie despite what's going on with the women. So when Andy was finished talking, Andy said, he said, wow, he said, let me see. Oh, Andy asked this, and I didn't want to forget this. I'm sorry, guys. I just wanted to make sure. Andy said, well, you know, Heavenly is the one that's always sort of saying things. Do you talk to Heavenly about it? Damon said, yes, we talk about everything. Of course we do. I've spoken to her about it. So Andy said, has she stopped? And Damon said she's gotten better. So Cecil started laughing, and then you know, of course, Steve wanted to butt in. Well, it doesn't matter. Damon's taking accountability and this, that, and the other. He doesn't deflect. He doesn't deflect. So I said, okay. So Eugene said, I don't deflect. Steve said, a hit dog will holler. I didn't even mention your name. So Andy said, well, Steve, who are you talking about? Eugene said, Eugene got in and said, Eugene Bush, I suppose. And Steve said, well, it's evident. Steve, I'm done with you. So that's what I'm saying. You knew you were talking to Eugene. You should have just stood up in that moment and said, I'm talking to Eugene. That's why I say he went too far. What he was trying to do, trust me, was lost. A lot of people that probably had Mimi and Steve's support, it was lost after this particular reunion. So of course Andy said this men's segment was finished, and Damon said, Andy, you asked me a lot of questions this particular time, and Andy said, I know. And he walked away. And that was because, and I say because the Kimes have been getting away with a lot for a very long time. They don't share enough. You know, of course, you know, like I said, Heavenly is beloved on this show. She's kept this show going for a long time. She said a lot of funny things. She's had a lot of funny moments and stuff like that. But again, we've never gotten a lot of personal story from Heavenly and Damon. And I think now Andy's sort of looking at it. So he was sort of pressing on Damon, like saying, in other words, you can't be on this show and just not give us anything. So even with Damon asking Andy about that, that let me know that he felt the change, or he felt the shift in Andy Cohen's behavior. So the women and the men come out together. And so they show clips of the couple's moments and all that with them in Jamaica and all that other stuff. So Andy asked Curtis, they just had some cute questions about, you know, Curtis, what would you ask Jackie to do, you know, that she didn't do when she was your girlfriend versus your wife? And he said, have sex. And, you know, of course we know that Jackie was a virgin when they actually got married. And so, you know, they did not have sex until they got married. So he said if he could go back, he would have asked her for sex. But then again, it's like, Curtis, why are you saying you would ask Jackie for sex when you were saying that Quad and King were doing it the wrong way, trying to have a baby and sort of having sexual intercourse, and they weren't married? So there was kind of like, okay, that didn't really even make sense. And so Cecil and Simone, Andy asked Cecil the same thing. He said, well, Cecil said that Simone was more mild-mannered when they were dating. He said she was more mild-mannered and subdued. He said, you know, he was pretty much always right in their relationship. And Simone joked around and said, you know, I had to get the ring. And that was pretty much about it. Andy asked Mimi and Steve, how do they keep their marriage together as a couple, especially with having a special needs child? They said, Mimi said that they do date nights, they check in, they try to validate, you know, they try to check in and make sure that the other one is good. Steve said he tries to validate his wife. So Andy asked Simone, he said there are a lot of questions about whether Cecil works or contributes to the household. And he said, can you clear up the misconception about Cecil? Simone said that Cecil has 2 jobs. And she said that he pays for things. And she said some things with the household things, they sort of split. But she said, Cecil, I do not have to pay for everything. So she cleared that up. And so Andy said, have you cut the boys off? Simone said, no, it's a gradual process. We're creating boundaries. So Andy said, basically, what the conversation with you and Michael, Andy Cohen said, hey, you know, it was a little jarring. You know, I really didn't care for it. And Simone said, and Jackie's sort of butted in and said, you know, Simone needed Cecil to back her up. And Simone said, correct. She said, if I say no, you know, Cecil should tell the boys, hey, your mom and I had a discussion and, you know, we don't agree, and the answer is no, or back her up. She said instead Cecil kind of throws her under the bus, and he doesn't realize that him sort of going against her many times has hurt her feelings. And she said he did not know how badly that actually hurt her. Um, so Andy said Curtis got a little backlash from what he said to King when the guys were hanging out, and Curtis said that he didn't know the magnitude of how they were struggling to have the baby. Well, it doesn't even matter, Curtis. Like I said, you were making a judgment on King and Quad's relationship. It's not as if King and Quad, and I think I said this in one of my previous videos, it's not as if King and Quad came to you for personal advice and then you gave them your advice or what you thought was wrong. You just sort of gave your opinion, and you were sort of being judgmental toward them. And so Quad, basically he apologized, and Quad said that she accepted it, and Jackie said she was glad that Curtis took accountability. So that was pretty much it for that. So we finally get to all the issues surrounding the Met Gala. And so Andy said, Steve, why are you so upset that Toya and Eugene asked you to purchase a ticket for the gala? Because he said, in all honesty, it is for charity, so why do you have such a problem with it? Steve said that it was intentional and it was targeted, and they didn't give last year, and they wanted to hide behind that. Well, Steve, you're getting ready to have to eat your words, because all of it was cleared up in a matter of like 2 minutes. Toya said it doesn't matter because you still didn't pay. So Steve said, well, you didn't give anything last year. So Toya said the money was given to Jackie, and Jackie was nodding her head yes. Toya said, you know nothing about the finances of the Mad Gala. That's what she told Steve, because at this point, her and Steve are going back and forth. And Steve said, you're right. Steve didn't say anything, but everyone else agreed. He doesn't know. Steve's just coming in. He was just a guest there last year. He bought a $5,000 bowl, like I said, to show off that he could pay $5,000 and to sort of buy his way into the group. But again, he really doesn't know the ins and outs of the Mad Gala, because Mimi was just a friend of the show last year, and they had already planned the Met Gala when we were introduced to Steve and Mimi last year. They kept going. Steve said, I addressed Eugene, and he deflected. So Simone jumped in. Simone said, Steve and Mimi, I can understand your perspective and how you feel about how it went down. She said, but she has the right to turn away people at a private event, especially if they do not have a ticket. She said, I paid money, and I also purchased 10 other tickets. And she said the same heat that you got about the tickets or coming into the event without my ticket or whatever the case, she said, I got the same heat. So she said, basically she was trying to tell them, don't take it so personal, because Toya was on edge, and Toya was sort of doing everyone like that. Mimi said, no, it was an attack, and our presence provokes insecurity, all the insecurities that they may have. Well, why do they have to be insecure be insecure about you guys? I don't think that, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's an attack actually coming from Mimi and Steve, and I think they went about it all wrong, and I think it's going to come back to bite them, because like I said, reality TV, everyone says it is a monster. So any secrets, any issues that they're having in their marriage, anything that comes up with them buying this house, anything that comes up with this business, and any paperwork that's wrong is going to get out there, and they're going to have to deal with a lot, and they're going to have to answer to a lot. So them coming in all loud, wrong, and strong ain't gonna work in their favor, because they're going to see that sometimes people that you go against, you may need them later. So Contessa said that her issue was it was supposed to be about the ladies, but it became the Toya and Eugene show. So, they were kind of taken aback by that. I could see where Contessa felt that way, because Contessa was saying it was really about philanthropy, and it was really about giving back. But I don't think that it was as bad as the way Contessa's trying to make it. I think Contessa just has a problem sometimes. She still has a little problem with Toya and Eugene. Sometimes I think they've gotten to a better place, but again, she does have a little issue with them. So, Toya, let me see, I'm sorry. Oh, so Contessa said, Dr. Eugene, she said, basically, you shouldn't have been involved. You shouldn't have been at the door accosting people. You should have just been basically speaking to people, saying hello to the people. You shouldn't have really been involved, because it was about the Married to Medicine women. Toya said, straight up, she said, let me put this to bed and this gonna be it. She said, I'm gonna break this down so this can consistently and forever be broken. And that's exactly what Toya did. Toya said, and we've had this Met Gala for 3 years. She said the first year, Jackie didn't tell them any details. She just asked for the money. Jackie nodded her head. She said, Jackie, am I telling the truth? Jackie said yes. She said the second year, she said Jackie didn't share any details of the Met Gala. She just asked us for the money. We gave her the money, and that was it. Jackie, is that right? Jackie nodded her head. So all this stuff about Toya not giving money and all of those things, if Toya did not give anything, Jackie would have said it right then and there. So Toya did contribute to the Met Gala last year. Jackie nodded her head yes. So Toya said that this is the third year. I did the same thing. I asked them for the money and I told them that it was for charity. She said, I did the exact same thing, but it's a problem. She said, Jackie, did I not give you the money for the gala? Jackie said, yes. So Toya and Eugene did not take any of the money. They didn't do anything shady with the money. Jackie was just as involved. Jackie and Toya were doing it. Toya checked in with Jackie. She gave Jackie the money, and that's the end of this conversation. Steve, your point is no longer valid, talking about they didn't give money last year. Simone already told you Toya was under pressure, and Toya was pretty much just going around, running around like a chicken with her head cut off. So it wasn't just against you. And Jackie said that yes, Toya did the right thing and gave her the money. And that's exactly how the Met Gala has been ran or run over the past 3 years. Case closed, done, data. And that's really about it. I mean, we don't even have to really talk about that anymore. There was a lot. Everybody was getting riled up. And Qua said, everybody calm down. Eugene said, and Andy said, I want Eugene to speak. Eugene said the only reason why I got involved, he was talking to Contessa. He said, because my wife said I'm going to look like a fool if I don't get this done. He said they only had 2 days. And he said that Toya told him that no one was helping her. So he said basically as a husband, he sort of stepped in to help her do things. He said the reason why he was talking or dealing with people about their tickets is because it was a private event, which I understand, which means no one from the public could just walk in to this event without a ticket. He said there was one young lady who was checking the tickets, and Toya told Eugene to help her out because she was a woman by herself. And so Eugene said, that's when I stepped in. He said the lady was kind of getting, maybe overwhelmed a little bit because everyone was sort of coming in at the same time. So he helped out. And I understood that. So Contessa, just because you're not used to Scott helping you and being there for you, Eugene was just being there for Toya. To me, Eugene was not rude to anyone. He did not do anything that was out of order, so to speak. He and Steve got into it a little bit, but it was not something where he completely disrespected Steve and had security to walk him out. Both he and Mimi out. So I think the narrative that people are trying to say about Eugene is not true. Dr. Eugene is not a rude person by nature. I don't care if people say he's messy and all of that. Dr. Eugene is very professional. He's always very classy. He never even used a bad word or anything like that. He just basically told them, hey, you needed tickets to get in. And he explained himself pretty well. And that was that. To me, like I said, that was that on that. Quad just said, Toya, the only thing about it is that you just failed to realize that this was for us. She said, even when Jackie was in charge, it was always for us. And Toya said, I get it, but it's still the fact that they didn't pay. Basically, Steve and Mimi want to create another issue, but the fact still remains is that we didn't pay. Everyone else paid, but they did not pay. Steve said, you're insecure about us. Jackie said that basically Jackie is not going against anything that Toya said. And like I said, Jackie has to always be right. So if Toya was telling a lie, guys, believe it, believe me, Jackie would have said, Toya, you're lying, or that is not what happened. Jackie has to be right. Jackie is always right in every situation, even when she's wrong. So my whole thing is, if Toya was coming with some incorrect information or some misinformation, Jackie again would have said that. Jackie said that the 501c is about 30 days out. They are really creating this charity, and they are going to have this. This is going to be a real thing. Toya said, and that was my idea from the beginning. Jackie said yes. Andy said, next year, let me know, because I will contribute and I plan to donate. They all said thank you. They appreciated that. So the men, that was it for their segment. So the men went to the back. Eugene was telling Scott in the back that since it was a private event, he was sort of elaborating on what happened with the tickets. He said since it was a private event, he told the girl, let him know if someone came without a ticket. So they were talking about it. Steve comes in the room. Yeah. No. It wasn't personal. So Dr. Eugene said, yeah, it is personal. Everything you're saying to me, it is personal. If we're talking about a charity, it was about the scholarship, but you're making it personal because you're talking about us. So Scott said, okay, he was like, Steve, you already talked about this. We already talked about this. So Steve goes in. Well, your wife mentioned about me taking my shirt off and how attractive I am. And I know that makes you insecure and feel less than what you are. You singling me out. Like I said, at this point, Steve, everything, even if people agree with you about not getting a ticket, you're coming across now. I'm sorry, Steve. You're coming across as a jerk and an asshole now, period. That's not cool. That has nothing to do with it. Like I said, you have something against Dr. Eugene. I don't know what it is. It's like you're picking on him, and it's evident that that's what you're doing. And Steve, as a man, as an adult, even trying to be part of this group and being new to this group, that ain't cool, but that's just who you are. You're showing us who you really, really, really are. Eugene said no one singled you out. He said, now if that's how you feel, he said, sorry, if that's how you feel, if that's what you need, I'll give you that. Steve said, I'm going to keep it, and by this time, Shamar was sitting in there, which is Brandi's husband. I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it at 100. I'm going to keep it a buck. I'm going to say the truth. And so Eugene said, you know what? I'm done with this conversation. I will come back when he's not having a temper tantrum. And Eugene went to the room that was sort of like across the hall. And, the men don't say anything. Most of the times the women would kind of jump in, but the men normally don't do that with one another. So, Steve said he's insecure. He has a little man complex. Steve, you're going hard on Eugene. You have a hard on for Eugene. I don't understand why, but it's not a good look. And like I keep saying, see, sometimes you do things like that, bruh, it will come back to bite you hard. And you don't know what's going to come your way in this next season, because I'm sure they're going to be back for season 13. And like I said, I hope that you and Dr. Mimi don't need Dr. Eugene and Toya for anything. And they're another one. As long as y'all do group events, cool. But if Toya and Eugene have something at their home, do not come to their home, because you don't like them and you don't deserve to be there. So, Scott said, hey, what's up? You seem kind of hangry. Like, what's up? Get you some food, relax, chill out. You going too far. And that's what Scott was saying. And even though the guys were laughing about it, but Scott was trying to let Steve know, you doing too much. You're doing too much. And Steve really was. So, Andy comes back with just the ladies. He said the season has come to an end. It was another roller coaster season. Angel, he asked Angel what was her takeaway. She said she enjoyed the ladies. She loved being in the space, and she thanked them for it. Brandi said the same thing. She said it was an amazing experience. She says a lot coming into this group, with all the personalities and with people being all over the place. She said, but overall, it was a great experience. She wouldn't change a thing, and she had a great time. He said Andy asked Toya, what do you want the group to know about you? And Toya said that I will fight for the truth. She said it may hurt sometimes. She said I get into it with some of you sometimes, but she said I am a truth teller. She said I don't hold grudges, but I get upset. And all of them have said that. Even Heavenly, Simone, all of them have said out of everyone in the group, Toya is the least likely one to hold a grudge. So Andy asked Heavenly when the group, he said when the group is together next time, there's a possibility that you could be a sitting member of Congress. Heavenly said absolutely. Andy said, so I guess you'll be leaving the show. And she said, yeah, that's the plan, you know, if she wins. So Contessa said, well, I guess this is goodbye. And so some of the ladies started laughing. And, you know, the side where Heavenly was, they weren't laughing, but the other side was laughing. And Andy said, so are you wrapping her out now? You know, Andy really wasn't offended by it, but he kind of joked, said, okay, I guess you're wrapping her out. And so Contessa said, no, but if you're going to win. You know, basically, I'm speaking it, you're going to win. So this is goodbye. I think that Contessa was being sarcastic. I think that Contessa was in her own way being passive aggressive with that. She was saying, in other words, yeah, Heavenly, you're going to win, but so long, we're not going to miss you. Goodbye. Andy asked Simone, did she get the clarity she needed? You know, from Heavenly and Jackie. Simone said she thanked Jackie for putting their friendship in a place that lets her know that, you know, it's valued more than obvious sometimes, because there are times where Simone probably feels like, you know, Jackie doesn't really take up for her, but Jackie sort of took the time to come to her and really have a moment with her. So she said thanks to Jackie. She did say Heavenly. She said, let me say this to you. And he was like, uh-oh, because he already know how it goes between them. You know, Simone said just to have someone dragging, you know, just to have someone dragging me online on social media when I'm having a real moment on the show. She said it hurt my feelings. Heavenly's talking about Simone's not going to take accountability, but Heavenly's not going to take accountability either, guys. I know most of you out there are Heavenly stands and you love Heavenly, but Heavenly is just a nasty woman. No one in their right mind would even, I know that they're on a show, but in real life, guys, you would never deal with a woman who talks that much about your family, your husband, your man, you know, your dog, your job. You would never deal with anyone like that. So Heavenly said, well, it's hurtful when you attack my man, Simone, and you assassinated so many characters on this show, and you have done it first. No, Heavenly. Simone definitely hasn't started that. She said, you don't talk about things you've done. Simone said that to Heavenly. Heavenly said, no. Heavenly said, you have talked about my man. Simone said, yes, Heavenly, I've said things, but you have assassinated so many characters, so many of us on this show, and you have done it first, but you don't want to talk about the things that you've done. That was Simone. That wasn't Heavenly who said that. So Heavenly said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you decided to put your business out there. I would never do that. And good for you, Heavenly, but that's one of the reasons why you should either remain a friend of the show or you should get off the show, because if you can't ever share anything other than someone else's business and ride the whole season out of making jokes of them or telling more of their business and what you know, then you don't need to be there. So Simone, you know, Heavenly tried to, you know, get smart with her. As far as that's concerned, you know, I'm not going to tell my business. You're stupid if you do it. So Simone said, well, fine. I was here before you got here, and I'll probably be here, you know, once you're gone. And I wish you and Damon the best. So Andy said, let's end it. Toya gave the toast, and she said, you know, she just wanted to say cheers to season 13. She said she was speaking it. Jackie, no, she also asked, I'm sorry, he did ask Toya that about the toast, but Toya said that the ladies, let me say this first. Jackie said that Andy asked Jackie how does she want to move forward in the future. She said she wanted them to operate with love, and she said to Simone, you're never going to get rid of me. And they said they loved each other, and Andy said, did you block Jackie? And Simone said, I would never do that. She said, some other people I have blocked, but never Jackie. Andy asked Quad about the situation. Quad spoke up and said, hey, these girls are my family. She said, we've had our issues, but no one better play with us. And I think Quad is all the way in, both, you know, 10 toes down for this group now. Even though they've had their issues, it was good to even hear Quad say that. So Andy said, Quad, why are you so emotional? And Quad said, because I've had to come up through the trenches. And Quad has, but it's not always what Quad thought it was. I think Quad put more of the burden on herself than she really needed to. Did some of these ladies maybe turn their back on you sometimes when you needed them, when you needed them most? Yes. But I also have said, even in last season, Quad is not the easiest person when she's going through things. She's not the easiest person to communicate with or to get along with. So Quad sort of blocked them, and she sort of pushed them away and blocked them out as well. And then when they finally turned on her, it was everybody else's fault. So I think there's fault on both sides of that, but I'm glad that Quad and the ladies are in a better place. So that's when he asked Toya. They brought out champagne, and Toya said, he said, Toya, I want you to give us the last final word. She said, sure, as long as Mimi's not counting my drinks. And we know that, that was a joke, but we know that prior to, Mimi was very judgy about how many drinks Toya had, even when they were on a girls' trip. So Toya said that season 12 was very inspirational. She said season 12 was great. She said the women are inspirational and they continue to inspire. And she said going into season 13, let's not forget to do that. Let's continue to inspire. And that was the end of their reunion. So guys, I gave you as much detail as I possibly can. I hope it wasn't too long for you. I hope you were just able to listen and sort of go along with me. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Share my video, with someone else who you may think may enjoy the video. And please feel free to comment. Tell me what you thought about this entire season. Tell me what you thought about this reunion. Tell me how you felt about Steve's performance on the actual reunion. Do you think he went too far? Do you think he was right? Do you think that Toya and Eugene, are you team Toya and Eugene, or are you team Steve and Mimi? Let me know what you think. How do you feel about Curtis being so vocal and talking about something that he actually did? And just let me know your overall thoughts. If you just want to say hello to me, that's fine. I would really appreciate that too. I'll definitely reply back, and let me know your thoughts. And like I said, even if you have an opposing opinion, it's perfectly fine. I truly respect that. I love to hear from other people at times. As long as your comment is respectful, I'm cool with that. I would definitely reply, because like I said, sometimes you can give me a different way of looking at something, so I really appreciate that. So again, guys, have a great day. We have a lot coming up this week. If you watch reality TV, or if you watch the Housewives franchises, we do have the Real Housewives of Rhode Island coming back, and the ATL is coming back next Sunday, which is Easter Sunday. So guys, we have a big week ahead of us as far as the Housewives goes. So let me know, like I said, what you think. I hope you have an amazing day, a great week, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.